Anti-Semitism has been something that Jews have got used to over time, but I think that what we've seen in recent months is just so much worse. And I think it's been so pervasive at every level of society. We've seen it affect Jewish people in universities. They have fears about the police. They have fears about the government. They have fears about the opposition, with Labour MPs now dropping like flies again, even under Keir Starmer. They have fears about trade unions. I've seen an exodus of people from the National Union of Journalists, even because of what they see as a tolerance of anti-Semitism. There has been a doubt about the press on Jews. There's been theatres with a comedian driving out a Jewish audience member for not saluting a Palestinian flag. The courts, we've seen a judge now who apparently liked a comment against Israel in a case where he found guilty protesters for supporting Hamas and then let them off from punishment. It's gone through just about every part of British society. And I think that that's why, at the moment, most British Jewish people I know are utterly afraid of this massive rise in anti-Semitism. It's not, let's say, the normal rise that we're used to when there's strife in the Middle East. This is so much worse. And even the fact that I can say the normal rise is itself depressing. There should be no normal rise. There should be no anti-Semitism.
Can I separate, and lovely to see you again, my friend, it's been too long. Can I separate what's going on in the Middle East? I know it's said that the rise in anti-Semitism has prevailed since October the 7th. But if I can just put that to one side of the moment, because I've got different theories about that. Why do we live in a country, do you think, and I said this yesterday and it wasn't very popular, and I'll keep saying it because I believe it, because that's what a democracy is, right? Why is it we are so quite rightly appalled by racism against the black community, against the Asian community, against the Muslim, and quite rightly, by the way, I think any racism is abhorrent. But why are you able to sit on this show and go, it's a bigger rise than usual? Why is anti-Semitism, which is racist, by the way, and I will keep saying, why is that more acceptable? Why is that something that apparently Jewish people have to accept? That, to me, is as abhorrent.
It is abhorrent, and it's depressing, and it's tragic. And for Jewish people like myself, who, by the way, are Brits, I'm born and raised here, I have every right not to be a victim of terrorism, a victim of racism or terrorism at that. And I think that it's a very good question. It's not just here, though. It's across the whole world. We've seen calls for gas the Jews outside the Sydney Opera House, and then the police there saying, no, they were actually saying, where are the Jews? We've seen the heads of universities, leading Ivy League universities in the States, unable to call out anti-Semitism properly. It's spreading everywhere. I read in a report yesterday about a ski rental place in Davos saying that they won't serve Jews anymore. This sort of stuff has become pervasive across the world, across Europe, across the UK. And I know that British people, the majority of British people, don't want to tolerate this and don't feel that it's justified. But I think that it's time that ordinary British people, all the people at home, need to actually speak out more frequently when they see this sort of thing going on around them. There are very few Jews in Great Britain, something like 271,000. We're less than 0.5% of the population. So many people have never met one of us. But we're ordinary people like everybody else.
One of us, though, and to me, that's again wrong.
All these areas of life that I've said have been where there's been a rise in anti-Semitism.
The other day about the bloke in the supermarket with the loud thing. He stood there and he's going, "Don't buy any goods that are from Israel. It's all about the Jews." I mean, that is. I am not. I'll say it again because people get, "Oh, what about?" Yeah, I don't like any racism at all. I think it's abhorrent. But it is not fair that this is acceptable.
Well, I just want to say as well that, Jeremy, that Jews are not only being targeted in all these areas and walks of life, but they've also contributed extraordinarily in all these walks of life, because Jewish people have integrated into British society. We've been very lucky to be treated well in Britain, but we need to stand up against this as a nation, not just as Jewish people. The whole nation needs to stand up against it. In all those areas I listed, Jewish people have made extraordinary, disproportionate contributions to British life. And so I think it's time that the rest of Britain stood up and speaks out when they see it. They disapprove of it quietly, but what they need to do is speak out. I don't like these sort of woke words like allyship, but it's time for a bit of allyship for Jewish people.
I will.
Why do you think that is people aren't doing that? Are they scared?
Yes, I think people are scared.
Of what?
I think people are scared of a backlash. People are scared of entering into a problem where part of the anti-Semitism problem is to do with extremist Islam. I think that they're afraid of what might happen to them if they speak out against things like that. But it's not just Islam, it's on the left, it's on the right, it's at the extremes of all sorts of parts of society.
Can we make a point as well, that extremity, and I think it's a really important point, you know, when people are criticising other cultures, races, religions, there are extremist parts of every, but that is not in any way and shouldn't make people think that every part of that being is in that way. That's a really important point to make.
I have good Muslim friends who are with me foursquare in this fight against anti-Semitism. In fact, more than many people who have no faith or religion that they profess to follow. So I think it's vital that people who are against this, people who disapprove of our graveyards being smashed up, of Jewish heads of schools being told that their throat will be slit because there's a jihad, of all these sorts of attacks that are taking place on Jews, they need to speak out. They need to help us. They need to tell us they're with us. They need to complain to the politicians. They need to complain to the police. They need to complain to the BBC. They need to complain to the media. They need to complain to their bosses. They need to stand up for us because it's not just our problem. Our society is rotten to have any kind of racism in it, especially Jew hate from my perspective, but any kind of hatred. And therefore, it's vital, it's incumbent upon all of us that we must stand up against any kind of discrimination and prejudice for our own sakes, not for Jewish people's sakes, for society's sake.
Completely.
We've lost our moral compass on this.
Completely.